Yes, but
that
still...
Carnival was not for me.
Right. Dr. Naya, certainly, I'd want to hear if you have been to either of these two activities. You've been involved, reveling or Ash Wednesday activities, participating in Lent, giving up.
I didn't know this program was going to be confessional.
I have to do it really quickly, so just drop it on me in 20 seconds.
So I want to start by saying, David Rudder says, our Father who has given us this art so that we can all feel a part of this earthly heaven. Amen. That's the Calypso. And I wanted to quote that for us because, yes, I've been to Carnival. As a student at the UWI, I was involved in UE Carnival. I'm not a
Doctor,
Carnival.
we are out of time, but I'm going to tell you, we'll pick it up another time. That is all the time we have, doctors, for Lead Story this evening. Thank you so much for making it CVM TV, and thank you for making it Lead Story. That's all the time we have on Revelry and Repentance. Take care. From Kingston, Jamaica, this is CVM News at Noon for Thursday, March 6, 2025. I'm Courtney Lewis. Thanks so much for joining us. Portland has recorded its 5th murder since the start of the year, following the fatal shooting of a businessman during a home invasion in Anchovy, East Portland. The victim, identified as Albert Lindsay, otherwise called Bugsy, was said to have been in his late 50s and was at his home around 8:30 when men on a motorcycle invaded his residence, shooting him multiple times. He was later pronounced dead at hospital. This incident comes on the heels of another Monday attack where a fruit vendor was gunned down at his stall in Boundbrook, Port Antonio. The gunman, who arrived in a motor car, reportedly opened multiple shots on the victim, identified as only Jason, resulting in his tragic passing. Investigations into both incidents are ongoing. A motorcyclist and a woman pillion lost their lives in 2 separate road accidents in Hanover earlier this week. The deceased man has been identified as 30-year-old Richard Brown, otherwise called Romario, a landscaper of Houghton Gardens in Lucy. The identity of the woman has not yet been confirmed. Reports are that at about 7:30 p.m. Monday, Brown and a male pillion were traveling on his motorcycle from Lucy to Hopewell in the parish when he collided with a minibus traveling in the opposite direction. Both men were thrown from the motorcycle. Brown died on spot, and the pillion was admitted to hospital in serious condition. About 12:15 a.m. on Tuesday, a woman was driving along a section of the Orange Bay Main Road in Green Island when she lost control of the vehicle, which then hit a large stone and overturned. She was rushed to hospital where she was pronounced dead. The Hopewell and Green Island police have launched an investigation into both fatal incidents. Switching gears now, while many are concerned that technology may overtake their jobs, one educational expert is advising teachers to incorporate it into their classes. President at the Michael University College, Dr. Asburn Pinnock, says technology is not the enemy and can be used by teachers to enhance lessons.
Technology is a tool and is not a replacement for teaching or for teachers. Don't take this notion that technology will replace you. Technology will only replace you if you refuse to use it as a tool. Use it wisely, ensuring that it enhances rather than replaces. Engage your student in a meaningful way. And also remember that in using technology, you must ensure that the ethics are observed, especially in the social media. Today we are seeing social media being blasted with images of children doing all kinds of things. That's not only unethical, it's illegal. We have to be very careful. Please acknowledge the sources and sites and people who you have used content from. So all this chat GPT and these AI tools that can write essays for you, these are not picked from out of space. People are responsible for those content, and you must ensure that you give them every credit, or else it becomes unethical, or it is called plagiarism.
As Carnival season comes to a close in some Caribbean countries and the Lenten season begins, speaking on CVM's lead story, Bishop Michael Smith argues that the two cannot coexist. He believes the hedonistic spirit of Carnival undermines the reflective penitence of Lent.
You are catering to the flesh, which is diametrically opposed to what the whole season of Lent supposed to represent. Because in Lent, it's a time where you put the flesh under submission. It's not a time for the flesh to be exalted and to be lifted up and to have wanton expression. It's a time for the flesh to be put into subjection. And so hence we have fasting and penitence. And so Carnival, I don't believe the two of them can coexist because they are diametrically opposed.
However, Dr. Sonia Stanley Nair, professor of cultural studies at the UWI Mona, disagrees, arguing that Caribbean life is shaped by the same elements that connect both events.
That as Caribbean people, Bishop, Rev, you know this, that there is a way in which our lives are very much caught between these two, let me say, poles. And in fact, there is no contradiction that is in the body. These bodies, the same bodies that go to Carnival, go to church on Wednesday after Carnival, Monday and Carnival Tuesday. The contradictions are really only in our minds. And I'm not a religious scholar, neither am I a historian, by the way, I'm a cultural scholar. But what I want to tell you from my own research is that there are people on the planet, there are people in the Caribbean, there are people who are Carnival revelers, who are some of the most spiritual people. They do not see this question of the spiritual and the life we live on a daily basis, let's say the world or that of the flesh, as diametrically opposed at all. So for some people, Carnival is holy, and it is spiritual practice, it is ritual expression, and it has its place in our lives.
In a bid to improve the commuting experience, the Jamaica Urban Transit Company, JUTC, recently launched its new Ride Right campaign with the rollout of a new card system. Explaining the rollout on Sunrise was Corporate Communications Manager for the JUTC, Chantol Thompson, and Marketing and Sales Manager, Natalia Palomino.
So what this Ride Right campaign is about is to encourage, to emphasize safe commuting behaviors on two parts, from the passenger side and from the JUTC side. So from the passenger side, it's the standing line, which is where we'll be partnering, we're collaborating with the Transport Authority and the Ministry of Education. And then we have the Keep Your Receipt. Why is it so important to keep your receipt? And we'll be doing a 360 campaign to really push this to social media, digital media. Yes. We'll be on the ground, we'll be at the transport center talking to our commuters, and how to ride right from the JUTC side is continuously introducing our CNG and our LNG buses that is environmental friendly, and where we've been collaborating with the Jamaica Council of Persons for Disabilities to ensure that our agents can better cater to our special needs.
Yes. It operates on a cloud-based platform. Okay. So hear about this. This is one of the major benefits of the card. Now, for instance, each card have its own unique QR code and identifier number. So parents can top up their children card without actually having the card there Yes,
Oh,
yes.
so how do they do that, for instance?
Okay, so for instance, as I mentioned before, it have a unique identifier number, and each number is connected to a profile.
Yes.
Right? So let's just say I go to a pharmacy and I'm there topping up my card. I can supply the unique number to the merchant. Yes, and they type it in, and they would say, okay, baby Dennis Brooks, and I'm going to put $500 on Dennis Brooks' card, and then Brooks is okay to journey.
And with that, we take a break. Our discussion segment is next.
Is the due date for your income tax returns. Self-employed individuals are required to file their annual returns SO4 and estimated return SO4A with income tax, education tax, NHT, and NIS due and payable on one return. Companies are required to file the ITO2, which is the annual return, and the estimated return ITO7. Visit jamaicatax.gov.jm or call 888-TAX-HELP for details. Tax Administration Jamaica, working together to serve you even better.
Sports should be fun. Sports should be interesting. Sports should be entertaining. Sports should be riveting. This is CVM Sports. I'm Jordan Ford.
Hey you know all the people in your business?
You should take advantage of CVM TV's unbeatable small business advertising package. Trust me.
And get your goods and services in front of your customers today.
For $150,000, you get a high-quality professional commercial.
Plus 20 prime-time commercial spots.
That's massive exposure at a fraction of the cost.
Including on the #1 morning show in Jamaica, Sunrise.
So don't wait. Call us on 658-208-5377 and see your business goals happen right here on CVM Television.
Welcome back. It's time now for a discussion segment. Developments along coastal areas require careful consultation with the relevant authorities, with a strong focus on environmental impact and conservation. Today, we're discussing concerns about development work happening at Fort Rocky along the Port Royal Main Road. And joining us to shed light on the concerns is Dr. Teresa Rodriguez Moody, Chief Executive Officer of the Jamaica Environment Trust. Welcome, Dr. Moody.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. Now, first things first, what are some of the key environmental concerns surrounding the development at Fort Rocky, and how might it impact the surrounding ecosystem and marine life?
Well, thank you for covering the story. I'm not entirely sure the scope of the development works that are taking place, but what we were made aware of yesterday was extensive land clearance that seemed to be taking place in the vicinity of the Fort Rocky area, and we understand that it is for a parking lot. The concern that we have is that, first of all, the Palisades Port Royal Protected Area is a Ramsar site. It's a protected area, and they have some specific requirements for what is allowed in the zones. Fort Rocky falls within Zone B, which is a conservation zone. And in that zone, it specifically states what is allowed and what is not allowed. Now, it does allow that events such as parties, special events, festivals, you can get permission for that. But it specifically states that the removal or disturbance of physical or biological features such as dunes, sand, rock, artifacts, flora or fauna is explicitly prohibited. So this means it doesn't distinguish the nature of the vegetation. It simply states no flora or fauna and sand are to be removed. And this is what we're seeing. We saw some extensive cactus they play an important role. Remember, this is a protected area, so it doesn't matter whether or not you think it's important. The vegetation is important. It's not supposed to be removed. And so we have a situation where we have this damage done, and now we have to figure out how do you go about fixing it if it can even be fixed.
So, seeing that the work has already begun, what are some of the potential long-term consequences if the environmental concerns are not properly addressed?
Well, to answer that question, we'd love to know who gave permission to do this, because the fact is, it's clear from what I just read for you that no permission was supposed to be granted, whether or not any environmental assessment or any study was done. It's just clear that this kind of action is prohibited. The vegetation, the dunes, the flora and fauna in this area play a very important role in protecting. The Palisados is a very thin piece of land, it's a tombola, and so vegetation plays an important role in protecting the coastal road from any kind of erosion. And of course, remember that road protects or connects Kingston with the community of Port Royal. And so it's important that we don't remove this kind of vegetation because it plays an important role.
So is there a way we could perhaps reduce some of the damage at this stage?
Well, the photographs that we have seen show that we have extensive land clearance of this particular area. At this point, I am not sure I'm not sure what can be done. This is one of the reasons why we usually say that you want to protect and preserve rather than try and rehabilitate after the fact, because a lot of this vegetation that we just remove in a matter of minutes takes years to grow. And what do you do in its absence in the event of a storm?
Right. So, Dr. Moody, stay with us. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with this conversation in just a moment.
The Time is brought to you by Ford Territory.
All right, welcome back. We're continuing our discussion with Dr. Moody. Now, you left us at how we could have reduced the damage, but how do we balance development with conservation to ensure that coastal projects like this one don't do too much harm to Jamaica's natural resources?
The word balance is sometimes misunderstood and misused. I think that oftentimes we think balance means that we go in favor of developments versus the environment. Because I've often seen this reported that something has to give, so something has to pay the price, and it is usually the environment. We need to readjust our thinking. We need to readjust how we approach development, that the environment plays an important role in protecting all development projects, whether or not they're coastal or inland. And so we need to take a completely different approach to how we do development. And secondly, their laws are in place for a reason. We have organizations in place to protect and manage these areas, such as protected areas. And I think it's important that we don't try not to go around these issues. And also, very importantly, the NRCA Act binds the Crown, which means that whether or not a government entity is the one carrying out these works, it does not mean that they do not have to comply with the law.
All right. So, lastly, what role does JET play in monitoring these developments, and how can the public get involved in environmental advocacy?
So the Jamaica Environment Trust is an environmental NGO, and one of the important roles that we play is in advocacy and acting like a watchdog, essentially. And so what tends to happen, which is exactly what happened in this case, is that community members who are being impacted by a project or who have concerns can actually contact JET if they do not feel comfortable doing it, or if they want JET to assist in amplifying an issue. And one of the ways we operate is by working and contacting the necessary government agencies, reaching out to media to possibly help to amplify a story. And so it's important that the public remain vigilant of issues And where they have concerns, whether it be illegal burning, whether it be clearance, it could be illegal or legal, if they're not aware and they want some help in understanding what is happening in their community and impacting them, then they can contact us and we can try and assist them.
Well, we all have a role to play. Thank you so much, Dr. Moody, for sharing with us. That was CEO of the Jamaica Environmental Trust, Dr. Teresa Rodriguez Moody. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
To international news now, Ukraine's President Zelensky has arrived in Brussels for a summit with European leaders. The Brussels summit aims to boost support for Ukraine just days after the U.S. suspended military aid. More from the BBC.
Zelensky has arrived in Brussels ahead of an emergency defence summit with senior EU leaders as Europe prepares to ramp up defence spending. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, said this morning that leaders were meeting to rearm Europe and further cement their support for Ukraine. She says extraordinary times